Good morning. Thank you guys for joining our weekly training call. Today is going to be about which company to quote in specific situations. We all run into specific situations where we don't know which company to quote, what to quote, and so because we've got multiple companies, today I'm going to try to simplify it by giving you some specific situations and by also listening to some specific situations by you guys so that you know, so that no matter what scenario you run into, you know who to quote. Would anybody like to start with any specific situations of their own that they've had where they did not know what to do?
I usually know what to quote. It's just that yes, I guess I do not as good a job as I would like asking the health questions. Do you take any medications? Heart issues? Lung? No. Mm-hmm. And then so you're heading one direction, and then all of a sudden they're like, either a spouse or something, all of a sudden, or you're on Forrester's with an interview, and they remember, oh yeah, I do take that medication.
Yeah.
It's not like we haven't covered it 3 times. Do you take this? No, no. And then it's all of a sudden...
Part of that is...
Getting to, I guess, second and third level questions just keep...
Yeah, probably so. I mean, a little more additional field underwriting and additional questions sometimes will help that. But even myself, I feel like I do a real good job field underwriting and looking at their meds and asking them a multitude of questions, and then something will still pop up, that I have no clue about. And so, I mean, that'll happen whether you're...
If that's just the nature of the beast, it is what it is.
It is a little. Anyone else have any... I'll give you 2 specific situations that I know most of our mentorship agents have ran into. 2 things that you're going to run into when you're writing Forresters that you kind of need to prepare for and need to ask about. The two types of situations or 2 types of meds that will hinder getting a level benefit is a lot of times they'll have diabetes, and they'll be on a med called gabapentin. Gabapentin is normally for diabetic neuropathy, and if they're on this med, we need to ask them why they're on it. And if they don't say neuropathy, ask them if they have diabetic neuropathy or pain in the nerves of their feet. Sometimes they can take that med for other things. But generally, if they have diabetes and they're on gabapentin, then they generally have diabetic neuropathy, which means we're going to have to go with Forrester's because they're not eligible with coverage we're going to have to go with Gerber, because they're not eligible for coverage with Forrester's. So we're going to have to go with Gerber to a guaranteed issue. We had an agent run into that last week. I've also... Any questions about that specific situation where they have diabetes or they have neuropathy or they're taking a med called gabapentin, which is typically used for neuropathy? Any questions there before I move on to the next one? Another specific situation that we've ran into is when an agent... ask about heart or strokes or TIAs, and they haven't had those for more than 2 years. A lot of times Forrester's will see a med called Plavix or clopidogrel, Plavix, or clopidogrel, clopidogrel, or Plavix. And I think I'm pronouncing those right. A lot of times Forrester's will see those meds, and if they're on those meds at all, and it's kind of the same med, one's the generic and one's the brand name, if they see those meds at all, they will generally immediately offer them a modified death benefit with Forrester's instead of offering them level. But one thing that I know from experience, if you use that medical reference guide that they have, it shows that if they have been taking clopidogrel or Plavix for more than, if their first fill of it was more than 2 years, then Forrester should give them a level death benefit. They may not always say that on the phone, but we can we can prove it by calling the pharmacy and finding out when they were originally prescribed that med, and then telling Foresters that and getting level. Because all Foresters does is they see that med and they just instantly offer modified, even though that stroke or heart attack or TIA or heart problem may have been more than 2 years ago, and their first fill of that drug may have been more than 2 years ago. And if that's the case, then they are eligible for level. And so you need to know these specific situations, because a lot of agents would just write, Foresters, and they get offered modified and they don't know what to do. Well, in all honesty, sometimes we can still get a level death benefit by getting a doctor's note or by calling their pharmacy. A lot of times I can send them a letter with proof and actually get them to reverse their decision and actually get them to get level. We've had that happen 3 or 4 times this year probably already.
But if they're still taking that drug, then it's not.
No, they can still take that. They can still take that drug and still get level, as long as their first fill of that drug, which means they first started taking that drug, as long as that was more than 2 years ago. As long as it's more than 2 years ago, then they're okay. Because the Forester's medical reference guide will say clopidogrel. If the first fill was less than 2 years ago, then they're offered modified. Or if the first fill was more than 2 years ago, they're offered level. And so you need that medical reference guide or these underwriting guides when you're out in the field, so that you know how to proceed and which direction to proceed, so that if it's better for the client and it's better for us that they're on level, then we need to try to fight to get them level if it's possible. Now, if they have diabetic neuropathy, it ain't happening. But as long as their heart problem or their heart meds were being used more than 2 years ago, typically we can get it. So. Any questions on that specific situation, or any specific questions towards Foresters at all? Anybody on the phone? Anybody in here? I know we got some agents that have some filled appointments today, so we don't have as many people on the call today. Normally have about 15 or so, but I know we have less today. Jeff, Jason, Dennis, any questions from you guys? Jeff, have you had any questions on who to quote on specific situations when you've ran any appointments?
No, not offhand. Not really.
Okay. Tom?
I've got an appointment in Branson this afternoon. I got a lead. Another person in Branson, but they're 36 and have major illness.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't even know who to quote a 36-year-old with if we can't get them turned.
Yeah, it would depend on the major illness. We could possibly get them, if it's like diabetes or something, then we could write them a term or a UL. We could always write them. We could always write them final expense. I'm trying to think of. I know Great Western goes down to 40. Gerber goes down to 50. I think United Home. I don't know what age their. Let's see what age their guaranteed issue is real quick, because I know that's always it's an expensive product, but to at least give them some coverage. Sometimes it's a good idea. They start at 45. It would really depend if they're in really bad health and they're like HIV or AIDS, or they've had a recent cancer or recent heart trouble, or diabetes with neuropathy or something like that. Then under 40, I don't know that we're going to have a place for them. I can look into some carriers to see if we have something available. But for the mentorship program, since we use only a few carriers just to keep it simple, I don't think we have a specific situation for that need. Hopefully, it's not something too major in the last 2 years. So, because sometimes they could put major health and think that high blood pressure is a major health condition, or sometimes it could be they're in the middle of cancer, So we have no clue. But when you're in that appointment today, find out some details and then text me, and I'll try to.
Well, I hadn't set that one yet. I'm going to go call and set it. Whenever I set it, I'll ask.
Okay.
What the major illness is.
Okay, good.
Since I'm going to be in Branson for 1 o'clock, I might as well set them up for 2 or 3.
Yeah, and that way we can prepare for it too ahead of time. Okay, good.
I just want to make sure we had an option, but I don't want to go down there and be like, sorry.
Yeah,
I don't-
absolutely. Yeah. If you can't help them or sell insurance or write some business, then it doesn't help anybody involved to go down there. That's a great question. Any other questions or specific situations? I will say this, that with United Home Life, they cannot be on insulin to get their premier final expense option. For instance, Foresters does not care about insulin at all as long as there's no complications, where United Home Life does not accept insulin for their premier option. They do have a day one level option that's slightly more expensive than the premier, called Deluxe, but you cannot get the premier option with insulin. You also cannot get the premier United Home Life option if you are under age 65 and on Social Security disability or disabled. So that's something to also keep in mind. Let's think.
Hey Cody, what if they want to put the proceeds into a trust?
You can do that with in any of our companies. You could tie it right to the trust. That way the funds go there, and then it's proceeded out according to their wishes in their trust. Absolutely. Yeah, typically, a lot of times, sometimes we'll have to provide some proof of the trust, or like a cover letter, or like add it into the trust. But no, that's definitely something a lot of people do, especially with bigger policies. Not a lot of people do it with their final expense policies, but they could. Definitely, we can definitely do that. Let me see this. What would you guys do if someone was, let's say, 49 years old and they have HIV? What's the only company that we can quote them with?
Gerber.
Gerber starts at 50.
Great question.
Great Western is correct. So at 49, if they are in really bad health, the only company we can quote them with is Great Western. United Home Life has a guaranteed issue. I don't write it very much because it's extremely, extremely expensive. So we would sell them Great Western in that scenario. We would at least have some coverage for them, because most of the times you can't even get coverage without guaranteed issue if you have some type of recent major illness or HIV or AIDS or something like that. What would you quote them if they were 70 and they wanted $2,000 worth of coverage just for cremation, and they were diabetic with insulin, and they had a heart attack 2.5 years ago? Who would you quote in that specific scenario? 70 years old, they want $2,000 death benefit. They have diabetes with insulin, and they had a heart attack 2.5 years ago. Who would you quote then?
Foresters.
What do you think, Jeff, Jason, Dennis? Who would you guys quote? Speechless. You would quote Forrester's Level, because they don't ask about insulin, and they only ask about heart trouble in the last 2 years. So that person would be eligible for Forrester's Level immediate coverage. Forrester's is very lenient. It's very easy to get people approved with them, and they are a very simple company to write, and obviously extremely competitive as well. Okay, let's take it even a step further. Let's say that exact scenario, 70, $2,000 death benefit, diabetes with insulin, heart attack 2.5 years ago, and they're using Combivent for COPD. Nope, not Gerber. Gerber only goes down to 5,000. Nope. You could sell them Great Western. There's actually something that's better for them than even Great Western. 70 years old, $2,000 death benefit, diabetes with insulin, heart attack 2.5 years ago, and on Combivent, which is an inhaler for COPD. Anybody? You would still write Foresters, but you would sell them the graded death benefit with Foresters. And with the graded death benefit, the only reason they would get graded is if they have Parkinson's, liver or kidney disease, hepatitis C, or COPD. And if they have any of those, they can get the Foresters graded. It's not level immediate day one coverage, but it's a lot better than a guaranteed issue. So they could get, the beneficiary would receive 30% of the death benefit the first year. So if they had a $2,000 policy, they get about $600 or so. If they had after they live the first year, then it goes to 70% of the death benefit. And then after the first 2 years, it goes to 100%. So it still gives them a big chunk of their death benefit without having to wait the full 2 years like the GI companies that we write. You could also sell them for COPD. I know we haven't added this one to the mentorship program, but this is a company I use quite a bit. You could also write Equitable, because Equitable is the only company in the insurance industry that will give someone day one coverage that has COPD as long as they do not smoke. You have to pay a little more. They don't get a preferred rating, they get a standard rating. But Equitable will give them day one coverage with COPD as long as they do not smoke. So that's pretty cool. Anyone have any questions on that specific scenario? Let me give you another one. We'll go to a little bigger policy and get away from final expense for a second, because we'll run into these situations too. I wrote a 68-year-old male. This was back in August. I wrote a 68-year-old male. He seemed like he was in great health. Well, he had a double bypass surgery on his heart. He had a double bypass surgery on his heart 5.5 years ago. If you were sitting in that house and he wanted $250,000 of coverage, and he was a 68-year-old male, and he wanted a term, and he had a double, everything else was good, no cancer, no diabetes, a little bit of blood pressure and cholesterol probably, but the only major thing ever was a double bypass surgery on his heart 5.5 years ago. What would you do? What company would you write, and what rating would you quote him? Or what risk class would you quote him?
Well, I'm going to guess protective and probably at least a table 2.
Okay. You're at least headed in the right direction. Any other guesses on the call? What I did was, and you'll want to use this guy as a resource, I called John Volker at First Heartland, and he is the chief underwriter on staff. I think he's been with MetLife, Prudential. I think he's been with some major companies. He is our underwriting guru, and we go to him to ask him underwriting questions. And when we call him at First Heartland, he'll tell us what company to use and what risk class to quote them. So what he told me in this specific scenario was quote him American General, which we use for the mentorship program, and quote him a standard non-tobacco table C or table 3. And the reason being was because of the heart trouble or the double bypass surgery 2.5 years ago. So when I quoted him American General standard non-tobacco table C or table 3, he actually ended up getting. We went through a couple months of doing a paramed, a EKG, getting medical records from multiple states, and when when it was all said and done, he was issued American General Table C. This guy is good. He's seen probably tens of thousands or 100,000s of cases, if not millions of cases over the course of his lifetime. And so he knows exactly what to put them with and why. The reason that he told us the reason we did American General, anytime you're actually table rating someone or giving them a substandard rating below standard, or below a standard rating like a table rating, like a 1 through a 16 or whatever, you always want to use either American General or Banner. And the reason why, it's kind of a neat scenario, and I didn't know this till last year, is American General and Banner, they table rate off of a standard plus. All other companies, they go to standard, then they table rate off of standard. Or American General and Banner, they actually table rate off of the standard plus rating. Because when I ran this quote, if you were comparing American General and Protective, both standard or both table 3 options, American General was like $300 a month less expensive than even Protective.
25% less.
Because of the standard plus, because they go off standard plus. So if you ever got to do substandard ratings in the mentorship program, you'll want to use American General. And so we ran into that specific scenario, and it worked. Until you learn what to do, who to write, what to rate them, what to quote them, you can obviously call, if it's a term or a UL, you can call First Heartland and talk to John or talk to one of their analysts, and they can point you in the right direction. A lot of agents just simply call me or they text me. Most of the agents just text me. They text me all the information, and then I send them back which company I'd quote them and what I would rate them. I have that happen probably a couple dozen times a week. Just because until you know what to do or until you learn exactly the specific scenario, you want someone to pick their brain. And that's the point of the mentorship program, is so that you can pick my brain. And so when you get in the home, you sound like an experienced, intelligent agent, like you are. Any other questions on which company to quote? If they have these illnesses, what to quote? If you don't know what to do from there? Any questions related to that whatsoever? I know it's kind of been a shorter call, and we haven't had as many people on the call because I know there's multiple, especially our local agents are out on appointments this morning. But we're going to put this on YouTube as soon as we're done. So anybody that didn't listen to it can listen to it on the call, or the call on YouTube, on the Agent Mentor Cody Askins YouTube channel. Any other questions?
I don't have any questions due to that, but I got a question on the email that you guys switched over. I just have a deal that keeps coming up. I need to re-log in, but I don't have a password anymore, so what do I do?
You'll want to contact Jacob. Jacob handles all the new Zoho email stuff. You want to call him or shoot him an email, and he'll get it squared away.
I know.
Shoot him an email? But I can't. Okay.
Yeah, or call him. I mean, shoot him an email from your email, or from your personal email, or call him.
Okay.
I remember when we first went through the training that we wrote a lot of this down. Did you have a cheat sheet out that said, and I can't.
I do for all the final expense carriers. Yeah, I had that cheat sheet that I gave you a while back. I can re-email that out if I need to, or get
have it in there.
Probably so, or get Katie to send that out to everybody. The main thing I wanted to accomplish from today's call is to give you a few situations or scenarios that you're going to run into that you know what to do and how to do it when those arise, like the popular ones, like the ones I mentioned today. And if you have some unorthodox ones, believe it or not, I've been doing this for over 5 years now. I still have to call someone and ask a question every now and then. I sold a big long-term care on, I believe it was Wednesday, and I got to ask a specific long-term care question that even I did not know. So I said, let me go find out. And I went and found out the answer and came back and gave it to them. It's better to ask than to give them the wrong information. So even after over 5 years in the business, I still ask questions from people that have been in it longer, or that maybe have more knowledge, or that's their position, is to answer questions. So don't feel like that you can't ask questions. Text me, call me anytime. Any other questions before we end this call and start our one-on-ones for the day? Okay. Thank you guys very much for joining the call. Let's have a monster rocking week. Who's going to put up the most numbers this week? Who's going to have the most commissions submitted this week? Yeah, we have a lot of aggressive agents. Don't all jump at once. Dennis, you're going to outproduce all these other guys this week, aren't you?
Yeah, I can't tell you.
Alrighty, well, thank you guys for joining the call. Let's have a monster week. Let's all put up at least $2,000 or $3,000 of commission this week. The key again to being in the insurance business, being successful, is to see enough people every single week. The person that sees at least 4 or 5 people or more this week will make a heck of a lot of money, and will help a lot of people that need help. So, thank you guys for joining the call. Let's have a fantastic week. We will talk to you soon doing our one-on-ones. Tear it up and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, guys.